You're watching CNBC Worldwide.
On interest rates, we're an hour from the announcement of what they decided on rates. But in the meantime, we'll talk with the author of a new book about Fed Chairman Greenspan called The Man Behind the Money. Sort of humanizes this, what has become a legend, a myth almost. Alan Greenspan as Fed Chairman. We'll get to that coming up. Talk with Justin Martin later in the hour. Up next, we'll talk to Alan Greenspan biographer Justin Martin about his new book called Greenspan, The Man Behind the Money. Just one of a handful of new books and articles that are out about the Fed chief right now. What's all the sudden fascination with this fellow? We'll get the scoop on everything from Greenspan's earliest jobs to his role as the nation's top banker under more than one or two presidents. After this. The Federal Reserve has wrapped up its policy meeting for the day. We're waiting for the announcement, which will come in about 30 minutes or so, a little more than that. But we want to take a closer look at Fed Chairman Greenspan. A number of books out about his life right now. One is a biography called Greenspan, The Man Behind the Money. It sketches his rise from jazz musician and researcher for Ayn Rand and her classic Atlas Shrugged to his current post, of course, at the top of the nation's Federal Reserve. We're going to share some insight into the man is the author of the book, Justin Martin. He's in Washington. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, good afternoon.
What a varied career he's had. I mean, it's been fascinating, hasn't it?
It certainly has been. I mean, he started out as a professional jazz musician. He, as you pointed out, spent time in Ayn Rand's inner circle, a advisor to President Nixon, to President Ford, and then Fed chairman under 4 different presidents.
Yeah, I mean, he was a reluctant participant coming to Washington when Nixon wanted to appoint him to the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors.
That's absolutely right. In fact, it took entreaties from Alexander Haig, William Simon, who was then Treasury Secretary, and a number of other people. Finally, his old Columbia professor and mentor, Arthur Burns, who was then Federal Reserve Chairman at the time, managed to convince him that it was his patriotic duty to come down to Washington in the waning days of the Watergate crisis.
What did you find? I mean, you know, you look back at his career, and it's certainly not the kind of career that would point to somebody who would aspire to the chairmanship of the Federal Reserve. But, you know, as a jazz musician or, you know, working with Ayn Rand, what do we know about him as a human being at this point?
Well, I guess what can be said with certainty about him as a human being is that he's someone who really values rationality, objectivity. He's a master data sifter, and whether it be his days with Ayn Rand or even his days as a jazz musician, he's always been very attuned to the data, to objectivity, to making sense of data streams, basically.
Yeah, I remember when Ronald Reagan nominated him back in the 80s to be the chairman of the Federal Reserve. There was a fear that he might be too much of a political animal, you know, having served Republicans exclusively to that point. And he turned out not to be at all. He's very much a nonpartisan Fed chairman, hasn't he been?
He's proven to be very much so. In fact, the interesting thing is probably the worst relationship he's had as a Fed chairman with a president was with George Bush Sr. Probably the best relationship he's had has actually been with Clinton, so he has proven to be very nonpartisan.
Does he care about his legacy? Does he pay attention to his press clippings? You know, here's a guy that is almost deified at this point, and all these biographies are out right now. Does he care about that?
You know, he absolutely cares about his legacy. In fact, when I spoke with his wife, Andrea Mitchell, she said to me, here he is in his 4th term as Fed chairman. Now, anywhere, in any other position in Washington, someone would be basically a lame duck. But here he is in his 4th term. She told me he gets up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday mornings, pores over the economic data. He's very concerned. He feels that people are only as good as their last decision in Washington, and he continues to worry that if a mistake is made or if the economy starts to falter seriously, that it would be squarely in his corner.
You know, it remains to be seen how he manages this particular cycle of the economy, but he will be known for the incremental movements that he's taken through the years since he took over in 1987. I mean, he's never been one to be too aggressive in pushing the economy one way or the other.
That's absolutely correct, and in part that actually comes back. I've talked to a number of people who suggested that might have something to do with his training as a musician and sort of an ability to improvise, an ability to move in one direction, in incremental steps, as you point out. If it seemed as if it's the wrong direction, to reverse course quickly.
Quickly tell us about that jazz musician period.
Well, it's very interesting. He went to Juilliard, and as opposed to one might expect, he'd have gone to school and studied economics initially, but initially went to Juilliard, the music conservatory in New York. And then he had an opportunity to leave school and join a traveling swing band. He auditioned. He was handed the job at $62 a week. He traveled all over the eastern half of the United States, playing at Jimmy Brink's Lookout House in Covington, Kentucky, and a number of other places. And he apparently had quite a good time.
And then he hooked up with Ayn Rand through his first wife, I guess, Joan Mitchell, yes?
That's correct. She introduced, after they had annulled their marriage, she introduced him to Ayn Rand, and he was won over and intrigued by her particular approach to laissez-faire capitalism, and forever after he's always credited her as being kind of giving him a moral imperative for capitalism.
Interesting. Justin, I see you. Good luck with the book. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Justin Martin, the author of the new biography of Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan, called Greenspan, the Man Behind the Money.